Hey YouTube, welcome back to my channel. This is Nathan Daley. I'm your law enforcement translator, here to provide insight on law enforcement issues. Listen, we have a great topic and discussion today. It's going to be a deep one. It's going to be a difficult one, so I'm asking for your patience. Before we get into that, I want to shout out to my subscribers. Thank you guys so much for sticking with me for this journey, you guys. We're on our way to 10,000. Listen, my goal is to hit 10,000 before May 9th. That's my mother's birthday. So listen, if you're new to this channel and you are just joining in on the content, please hit the subscribe button, please hit the like button, you guys, and let's get to 10,000 before May 9th. So what are we talking about in this video, you guys? We're going to be discussing a gentleman by the name of Othal Wallace. He was involved in a shooting where he actually shot and killed a law enforcement officer during their encounter. He's in custody and he is in Florida and he's being charged with murder, and he's also looking at the death penalty, you guys. This incident happened June 23rd, 2021, and it was a crazy chaotic situation where after the incident, Othal Wallace went on the run and he was later apprehended in Atlanta, Georgia. He was brought back to Florida to stand trial, and this is where we are today. Listen, I was familiar about this case, but I did not see the body camera footage until after having a conversation with a panel on this particular case. Now, I'm going to show you some clips from a panel discussion that I had on Black Men Unfiltered. As you guys know, he is someone that I go on his channel often, and I have debates and discussion on a multitude of topics. This incident came up when we were having a conversation about the black image, and a question was asked to me about the relationship between police and black people. I was telling them that there is a correlation when people perceive black people as a threat simply because of the color of their skin. This is a known fact. We call it profiling. There's always this assumption in some cases where black people are not given the benefit of the doubt when it comes to the criminal justice system. This is a known fact. No one can argue that. So when we got into this conversation, you guys, I'm talking to the panel. On this panel, I got a lot of pushback. People were in their emotions. They were expressing their feelings. They were expressing their dislike for law enforcement and the relationship that the black community has with them. Now, I'm completely understanding of that. But let's dive into the conversation so you guys can understand exactly what's being said and where the conversation went south. Now, there is a percentage where the officers are just completely wrong. There's no way around it. They're absolutely wrong. We've seen that with Kim Potter when she was, I don't know what she thought she was doing, but she pulled her gun and thought she had her taser when she shot and killed Dante Wright. You know, you have a situation like that. That's based on pure, reckless, untrained, pathetic officers, and they are sprinkled all throughout this country. It is always in our best interest, if you're being placed under arrest or you're being told what to do, that you follow instructions. It's just that simple. There are a lot of issues that need to be addressed on the police side. There's no doubt about it. What we can't argue is if you come across, and you can speak to this, Don, you come across an uneducated officer, you come across an officer with an ego, you come across an officer that's ignorant, right? It is in your best interest to follow instructions. See, Don's a First Amendment auditor. If he comes in contact with an officer who doesn't know the law, if you resist that officer in that moment, you open yourself up for a world of problems, hurt, whatever. Yes, there's a check at the end of the rainbow if you don't make it to heaven first.
Right. Yes, if you make it through, yeah.
Right.
Right.
It's not worth it. It's comply to survive. Then you come back and you fight the battle afterwards. This is the information I tell my loved ones, my nephews. I don't have kids yet. I'll be telling their ass the same thing. You comply to survive. Then we come and we fight the battle afterwards. It makes no sense to resist arrest when you're dealing with an ignorant officer who has a problem.
Absolutely.
Period.
Like I told you, Nate, I told you, Nate, I'm gonna comply completely. I'm gonna give that officer no reason to be nervous. You telling me what to do, I'm doing it. Now you get ignorant, and I feel like you're about to kill me anyway. It's me or you.
Exactly.
Well, unfortunately, that's the case for a lot of black men.
I'm a combat veteran, Nate.
The thing about there is a case. There is a case right now in Florida where a brother is on trial, fighting for his life for deleting a police officer, and he was part of the they were the militant. No, they were the militant group that was protecting the protesters
NFAC.
that was marching when Breonna Taylor was deleted. And so the police were in hot pursuit on them. And so this guy had got off work, sitting in front of his house, just sitting in his car before he goes up to his apartment, married man with children, protecting the people that are out there protesting. Police officer knocks on his window and asks what he was doing. And he said, I live here. I'm getting ready to go up in my apartment. What's the problem? And the police officer, proceeded to ask him for license plate. He's like, I'm not driving. What do you need it for? I'm literally parked, getting ready to go into my apartment. And this is what his camera, the officer's camera, shows. And it shows all of that, and it shows him asking to get out of the car. He was like, for what? And then an argument pursued it, and he stepped out the car. An argument pursued it, and then it didn't show anything else. The only thing we could hear is tussling, and then the gun went off. The officer ended up passing away. He fought for his life for many minutes. So the guy is saying it was self-defense. He made a decision that I guess he wasn't going to be a hashtag by being another black man that gets deleted by a police officer when he was sitting in his car in front of his house minding his own business. And it's in Florida. You guys can look it up. The guy, his name starts with an O.
Ortho or whatever.
Orsal something.
Ortho, I think it's Ortho.
Ortho something. Yes, yeah. In Florida. The case is in Florida. So these things are happening. It's unfortunate that, in my humble opinion.
So listen, when we have these conversations, we have to be very clear about the interactions that police have with the citizens. There's two things that we need to discuss, right? Let's be honest. I'm going to be completely transparent with you. When it comes to police brutality, there's data that we collect nationwide from all the police departments. There's approximately 18,000 police agencies across the nation. Now, when we look at that, we look at the data that they provide. When it comes to police encounters and brutality, only 40%, approximately 40% of these departments turn in and submit data to a nationwide database that will show what the interactions look like from a use of force standpoint. Now, when it comes to actual police shootings, we have the accurate data, the most accurate, I would say, because that is reported amongst all of the departments. What does that data look like? If we look at from 2021, according to Mapping Police Violence, you guys can check them out, 1,139 people lost their life in a police encounter. Now, with that being said, let's look at the breakdown between black and white, because that's always what we're usually focused on. When it comes to African Americans, over 264 African Americans were killed during a police encounter. Now, when it comes to white people, it's 480 were killed in a law enforcement encounter, you guys. This is very consistent. Every year, we know for a fact that white people lose their life more from a police encounter than black people. Now, some like to argue and say that black people are disproportionately killed by law enforcement. You guys, I don't like the idea of using disproportionately. It doesn't hold any weight. It doesn't really mean anything. People like to snake the argument to formulate and support their argument by saying disproportionate. I'm telling you, it doesn't matter. Because when you use the word disproportionately, a lot of times it lacks context, especially when we're talking about lives being taken from encounters. Each encounter with law enforcement has to be examined individually. Why do I say that? Because the type of crime matters that's being committed by the individual, the person's age, the behavior, their attitude, their criminal history. All these things are factors. We also have to look in the factors of the officer, how well the officer was trained, and what the circumstances were surrounding the actual event where the person's life was taken. I'm not saying that to say that the officers aren't wrong when they make mistakes. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that every encounter has to be looked at on an individual basis. So again, when we say disproportionately impacted, if you're not taking in consideration whether or not there was a weapon involved, what the behavior of the assailant was or the offender, what was actually being committed, you guys, then you're being disingenuous. Again, if we remove the unnecessary language, we look at the facts, look at the numbers. right? We look at the whole idea that over 60 million people come in contact with the police every single year, and approximately 10 million people are arrested by the police every single year, approximately. And out of those, we're looking at approximately 1,200 people lose their life from a police encounter. You guys, one would argue that the police are better trained than what the media likes to perceive. And so again, when we have these discussions about what the police are doing, what the police are not doing, we do have to keep in mind that the police are doing a good job. What is it that we don't like about the police? It's the professionalism. It's the abuse of authority, the abuse of power, police brutality. You guys, yes, this is true, but this is not the norm. This is not the normal experience that everyday people are having with the police encounters that they do have. And so we have to be honest. And when we start making disingenuous arguments based on emotion, emotion that's absence of logic, absence of facts, absence of data and statistics, you guys, it's a problem. Then we start leaning into the idea that we are pushing out a narrative that's creating fear mongering amongst our community. We have to be honest. Not only do we have to be honest, we need to be patient when someone who has experience, when someone who has the information is speaking and providing that truth to you, providing a behind the scenes perspective. It's in our best interest to listen. Be slow to speak, right? And so I think in this minute, in this panel, I lost it. I lost my cool because this is the same issue that we have that causes a lot of the outcomes that we receive from law enforcement. The fear mongering influences the behavior. If a person is afraid of the police, when they encounter them, if they assume that every encounter is going to be a lethal one, or one where their life is going to be taken, then of course they're going to panic. Of course they're going to act in an irrational manner because we have people in our community that are spitting out and spewing out lies.
The quote unquote good cops are still being they get labeled bad cops too, because unfortunately they are in a corrupt system, and then they get in the system and then they see things and they continue to keep the blue code of silence, because in fear of losing their job, in fear of retaliation, in fear of no one coming to back them up if there's a call and things of that nature. So unfortunately the whole system is broke, and in my humble opinion, reform doesn't work. It never have. We've been
That's
reforming the criminal justice system. We've been reforming the police system. We've been performing the prison system. Reform doesn't work. To me, it needs to be a whole destruction of it and a whole rebuilding of it. It has to be new strategies put in place, better training, mental health training for officers, and all these things, because we are losing lives of innocent people, men and women, for these things. Now, that officer's life wouldn't have never been taken had he just mind his own business and let the man sit in his car that wasn't doing that. But because he was a black man sitting in his car minding his own business, obviously he wanted to delete that man, and that man said, "Not today, not me.
Okay, slow
I'm going to
down,
fight
OG.
back."
Slow
I'm
down,
just
OG.
saying.
Damn,
Slow down,
Nate.
though. Why I have to slow down, Nate?
Damn,
gotta
Nate, already?
Yeah, you got to slow down, OG, because see what happens. You start to conflate multiple things that aren't accurate, right?
Like
And
what?
so,
Like what?
so this is the talking points that cause a lot of fear mongering in our communities when it comes to the police, right? The officer did it because he was black. He got shot because he was black. No, listen.
They
the
were already
officers. The
targeting that.
officers caused the fear
Wait a
mongering.
minute. No. The thing
something.
is, they were already targeting that
Let me say something.
organization, the NFA. They were targeting them. They had been harassing them when they were when they were protecting the protesters. They were following some of them. They were already, because these were armed militant guys. These guys served in the service and they knew how to fight. He was licensed black belt, this guy was, and he was armed to carry legally. And they knew that. And I think that is a part of the police officers, police department, that don't like that when they see black men that can legally carry. Like, it's something. I mean,
That's not true.
Philando
It is true.
Castile is a prime
That's
example
Florida.
of that.
That is Florida. They do that a lot
No,
in
That's
Florida.
not.
Philando
Yeah,
Castile
let
is
him
a
cook.
prime example of when a black man is armed. It's a prime example of it. He
But see,
tells them,
the
"I'm
problem,
armed. I'm
OG,
licensed.
slow
I'm going
down,
for my
slow down.
ID." No,
OG,
no.
slow down
I don't
because
buy
here,
it.
you don't have to buy it.
Go ahead.
I've
No, no,
done the
I'm saying
job.
no.
But
No.
I'm trying
I'm
to tell you,
saying no, Nate. I'm saying I don't buy the fact that it's not fair on both sides of the spectrum. If they stop a white man
that's
that
not
is
true.
licensed to
Stop. Hold
okay,
on. Pause.
okay.
OG Patrice,
Mm-mm.
please. And again, this leads us to the conversation about Othal Wallace. Everything that I'm saying now leads up to the reaction that he had with this officer. His justification for taking this officer's life is rooted in a false sense of reality. Listen, you guys, perception is reality, and I know that. That applies on both sides, law enforcement and black people. As an officer, if I perceive black skin as a threat, then of course I'm going to act irrationally. I'm going to act out of fear. As a black person, as a black man, if I fear that blue uniform, that officer, as a threat, the fear, my response is going to match that. You guys, listen, this is a color issue on both sides. One side is afraid of the color blue. One side is afraid of the color black. Listen, I'm trying to tell you, we have to be patient. We have to slow down and stop pushing out propaganda, misinformation, disinformation. I'm not saying she's wrong. I'm saying she's not accurate. You guys, there's a difference. Because this, again, is what I'm talking about. We have to be careful on how we say certain things about the relationship between police and the black community. We have to be careful because a lot of us speak out of pure, raw emotion, all absent of logic. When you don't know the truth, you speak off of emotion. I'm telling you to slow down. I'm telling you to slow down because, see, a lot of us don't like the police and we have legitimate reasons not to. But when you start talking about certain things, you have to be mindful of how it translates over the ears and through the minds of people who look like us, who are hearing it. This is why I started my channel, to be very clear about the myths, to be very clear about the truth and the reality. When we start throwing this race in between whites versus black, it is a problem. We have to be mindful. You have someone on this panel who's an officer, have a lot of experience.
I understand that, and I respect that.
Ask me the question directly. Let me explain it properly, right? It's no different than you and your profession.
But Nate, you know, I told you my family story.
I get it. I get it.
On your channel.
I get it. I'm just saying, when someone has accurate information, someone who works in the field, let that person clarify the misunderstandings, because what happens with us in our community, we keep pushing out propaganda. The reason why we're having a lot of negative encounters with the police, we have preconceived ideas of how the outcome is going to turn out. We act out of fear and we end up getting hurt. And the reality is we can't use, hold on.
Now that same thing can be said for the police. They act out of fear. They act out of fear.
Don, hold on, you guys. Everybody's so damn emotional. Give me a second.
Emotion has nothing to do with it, man.
It is emotion because
emotion has nothing to do with this, man. This is reality. We live this. We see it.
I get it. Let
them talk, because everybody up here got more experience than I do when it comes to
No, Nate. Honestly, I want you to finish.
I had to pause her. I had to pause OG Patrice because the things that she was saying was grossly inaccurate. And it's propaganda, it's fear-mongering, the danger behind that. This is what I'm dealing with, you guys. This is why my channel exists. For that very, very reason. The dangers of spreading misinformation, of not allowing someone who can provide insight to speak, someone who has the experience to speak on it. Listen, you guys, I'm not your enemy. I say it all the time, and I mean that. One would look at me and think that I'm playing on the wrong side of the team, you guys. We don't understand how power works. If you're not present, you can't provide influence. What are we talking about? Othal Wallace, you guys, we're going to dive into it. And on this video, I'm going to show the body cam footage. I'm going to let you decide. I want you to compare what she stated to what you see. And I'm going to tell you about the law. I'm going to tell you how it works. I'm going to give you perspective from a law enforcement officer. How does it work? Was this officer wrong? Was Othal Wallace wrong? I think we're asking the wrong questions. Let's dive into it. Let's dive into it. Let's look at it. I'm gonna play the video for you, and then we're gonna discuss it. And then I'm gonna leave you to decide and make your own decision. I'm curious to know what it is you come up with after this conversation is over. Is Othal Wallace in the wrong for what he did? Was he justified, or was the officer wrong in what he did? I'm gonna give you the truth, unbiased, unscripted, raw truth. And then I'm gonna let you decide.
How's it going? Do you live here?
What's going on?
Sit down. Sit.
Sir.
Can you sit down? I'll talk to you.
Okay,
Stop.
no, come on now.
Sit.
Come on now.
Sit.
Don't do this.
Sit down.
Why you asking me do
Sit
I
down.
live here?
Do you live here? Yes or no?
What's going on though? Who?
Charlie 777.
Nah, back up.
Stop.
Man.
Stop.
Stop.
Stop, man.
Now, you guys watch the video. This is extremely tragic. One would argue this death, this shooting was extremely unnecessary. It was callous and it was sinister. But let's talk about it. Now I have to give you some backstory about Othal Wallace. He's part of an organization called the Nfac, the Not Fucking Around Coalition. This is the organization. They stated that he's no longer part of the organization. Whether true or not, this is the reality. What is this organization? It is a black supremacist group as it's labeled online. It's also labeled as a black empowerment group or an anti-police group. It's a black empowerment group seeing that they are combating the ideas of corrupt white supremacy. Now, every organization can stand on its own. It's not about the organization as much as it is about the teaching. About the teaching. And why do I say that? Again, this whole thing about teaching fear, about an encounter with a police officer, that being black means that you're automatically targeted, you're automatically killed by an officer, that their job, their mentality is to assassinate and hunt black people. If that's your mentality, if that's what you're being taught, if that's the organization's ideology about the relationship between white people, white officers or black officers or police officers in general, and relationships to black people, if that is the mentality, then of course, what is the behavior going to be when you encounter a police officer? It's not going to be positive. Even if the officer is professional and respectful, you're always going to assume that that officer does not have a legitimate reason to do their job. Now, with that being said, and I say that because we're talking about the mentality, the mind state of a person who thinks that way. No shot to Othal Wallace, and I'm not bashing him. I'm talking about the state of mind. Right? If you're anti-police, if you encounter the police, obviously the outcome is not going to be positive. So what happened, you guys? On the body camera, what do you see? You see an officer, he's driving up into a neighborhood. Now I'm watching the body camera, and I'm going to be honest. You guys, there's 4 seconds missing from the body camera footage. That's not a good look for the police department. Listen, in a situation like this, we need 100% transparency, no BS. But I remember watching this video a long time ago, you guys, and I have to say this, and I'm gonna be honest. I could have sworn he stated he's stopping him because of suspicious activity. That's what the officer stated, if I'm not mistaken. That's the words. Now, for some reason, I don't recall those words being removed, but now I'm watching the video, I don't hear them. So for anyone who has the full video, please send it to me. I'd like to double check that. So don't quote me on it. But I could have sworn the officer made that statement to him. Now, if that's the case, why would the department edit that out? That's not a good look. And I'm gonna tell you why. There's a couple different scenarios on how this can go. I'm gonna argue from both sides, you guys. That's normally how I do it. I'm gonna argue from the side where the officer is correct and had a legitimate reason to stop Othal Wallace. I'm also gonna argue if the officer did not have a legitimate reason, lawful reason to stop Othal Wallace. You're gonna get both sides in this video, and it's very important that you get it because we're gonna talk about the importance of understanding the law and the importance of acting appropriately when the law is enforced on you, whether legally or illegally. Now let's talk about it. The officer gets out the car, he makes a statement, he starts to approach Othal Wallace. Othal gets out of the vehicle, he tells him, hey, do you live here? Othal Wallace starts to get out of the car. The officer says, hold on. He said, sit back down, just sit back down. He gets out the car, he said, why are you asking me if I live here? What's going on? The officer did not explain to him. One could argue that he didn't have the opportunity to. One could argue that the officer should have led with the reason why he was being stopped. But here's the problem, right? In that moment, you see the officer reach to his radio and he starts going to request for backup. In that very moment, there's a tussle. And in that moment, what happens? We can't see off camera, but Othal Wallace draws a weapon from his waistband and fires one shot into the officer's head, and the officer drops to the ground, and we see it on the body camera. Where did the officer go wrong? Two things. One, the officer is investigating what we call a suspicious activity. This is the unique thing about suspicious activity. It's not a crime, right? It's what officers call articulable reasonable suspicion if it's done on our own. If it's not done on our own, then the other form of that comes from a witness, a complainant, someone who called 911. So here are the three ways suspicious activity can happen, you guys, and let's go ahead and break it down. If someone calls 911 and says, hey, I see something, it looks suspicious, the person's sitting in their car, the police are obligated to go and check. So again, a lot of people call these Karens, right? Where they over-exaggerate a situation simply because they see a black person doing something that they don't like. I get it. Whether or not, I don't know, and I have not been able to confirm whether or not it was an actual 911 dispatch call that caused him to go and address the situation. If that is the case, that means the officer had a legal justified reason to make contact with him. What's the second way? The second way is if the officer is patrolling in the community and he sees something that appears to be suspicious to him. He does have a right to go and ask questions. He does have a right to go and talk to an individual. It doesn't mean a crime has occurred, but it's on that officer to be able to articulate why he felt the need that this situation arose some type of suspicion in him. That's on the officer to decide. The problem with that is some people are saying, what's suspicious about a black man sitting in a car, minding his own business? I agree 100% with that. Here's the problem with that logic though. As a individual on the outside looking in, you do not know whether or not the officer had a legitimate reason to ask you the question in the first place. There's a reason for this, and I'm gonna tell you why. There are times where officers are following up on prior incidents, following up on things that may have happened a few days ago, following up on situations like, hey, we're looking out for a gray car that was involved in a burglary, a gray car that was involved in shoplifting, or an individual we're looking for with dreads. He's black, he wears this, he drives this kind of car. And so we don't know if the officer is operating on a past situation and he's following up on something or looking for someone who is at large that has not been caught yet. This is a real thing, you guys. I'm not saying this to BS you. This is real. I've done it all the time. People get away. People are seen on surveillance camera committing crimes. We have a lookout. We call it bolos. Be on the lookout for this vehicle, for this person. He could have saw something. He could have identified a car. We do not know because he's no longer living. We can't ask him. So we don't know why, if this was a suspicious activity that he decided to do on his own, and this was not dispatched, we don't know where it's coming from and what information he's pulling from, or made him feel like he needed to address or talk to Othal Wallace. Now, what's the third situation? The third situation is he was profiling. Let's keep it real, right? You see a brother in the car, you're driving through, right? It's around 9 o'clock at night. You assume he might be doing something he's not supposed to be doing. You could very much well be racially profiling. Maybe there's not a lot of black people who live in that community he looks out of place to you, right? So you decide to stop and have a conversation with him. It could very much well be a thing of racial profiling. Now, those are the three situations, you guys. They're all legitimate situations. 1, lawful 911 call. 2, the officer is responding off of prior knowledge. Or 3, the officer illegally went to stop him and racially profiled. Now, what is the problem with the actual encounter? The law. Let's talk about the law, you guys. I'm gonna segue a little bit. What rights do you have as a citizen? Here's the thing, you guys. There are what we call 3-tier encounters with law enforcement. Tier 1 means just a casual encounter. I have a right to come and talk to you. You don't have a right to talk to me, right? So this is a Tier 1 encounter. It's a casual encounter. I see you walking around. Hey, sir, how you doing? Hey, officer, I'm doing well. That's Tier 1, casual. No crime committed. I'm not investigating anything. Tier 2 encounter means that I'm actually investigating a crime. Now, in a Tier 1 encounter, you guys, you're free to go. If I have no charges against you, I can't hold you against your will, right? You're not under arrest. That's a Tier 1 encounter. Now, a Tier 2 encounter means that you are under investigation. It means you're not free to go. And if you're not free to go, that means you're being detained, whether you're in handcuffs or not. You can be detained and not be in handcuffs. If you are under investigation, if an officer says, hey, I'm investigating a crime, you fit the description, you're not free to go until I'm done investigating. You guys are being detained, right? Tier 3 encounter means that you're under arrest. You're detained, you're under arrest, the cuffs are on you, you're going to jail. I have all the evidence I need to lock you up. You're not free to leave, right? That's Tier 3. We're going to talk about the 2 tiers, 1 and 2. The question is, did the officer have a legitimate reason to stop and talk to Othal Wallace? Yes, he did. He can talk to anyone he wants to. Now, if he is not investigating a crime, he cannot keep Othal Wallace from leaving. This is the reality. Where did the officer go wrong? He put his hands on Othal Wallace. He should have never touched him unless he was not free to go. This all comes back to whether or not this is a legitimate stop. If the officer was legitimately investigating a 911 complaint or a crime, Othal Wallace was not free to go. Not free to go. The moment the officer put his hands on him, you could argue that the perception is from a citizen that I'm not free to leave. If Othal Wallace felt that way, okay, he's in the right. The officer's responsibility is to tell the subject, the citizen, that you're not free to go. Sir, hey, I'm investigating a suspicious person call. I'm investigating harassment. I'm investigating burglary. You're not free to go. You fit the description. I need you to identify yourself. You guys, that's how it works. If an officer presents that language to you, you need to cooperate. You need to cooperate. Now, in Othal Wallace's situation, let's dive a little deeper. Othal Wallace feels like he's being harassed. He felt like, hey, listen, I do live here, officer. Why do I need to prove it to you? I didn't do anything wrong. He's right. He's right. He's absolutely correct. Where did Othal Wallace go wrong? He lacked the patience. He didn't show any patience, you guys. In situations like this, I tell people all the time, be patient. You don't need to rush it, because when you move wrong or you say the wrong thing, you make yourself look guilty. Did he have to answer the officer's questions? No. What should Othal Wallace have said? And this is the problem I have with these anti-police organizations. We need to be teaching people how to interact with the police properly, understand the law, understand your constitutional rights. What should he have said? Othal Wallace should have said, before I give you anything or say anything, are you investigating a crime? Did I commit a crime? That's what he needed to ask him. I'm not answering anything until you prove to me that you're here for a legitimate and lawful purpose. That's what Othal Wallace should have said. He has nothing to hide. He has nothing to hide, assuming. So, did I commit an offense? Are you investigating a crime? The officer is obligated to tell you. He has to. No, sir, no crime. Okay. Well, am I free to go? You guys, that's the follow-up question. Am I free to go? The officer has to tell you yes or no. If no, am I under arrest? Am I being detained? And for what crime? You need to tell me. Then any other questions, I plead the fifth. I'm not saying anything. I want my lawyer. I'm not saying anything. You can arrest me. I want to document it. And then I'll hit you with the lawsuit on the back end. People do it all the time, you guys. Where did Othal Wallace go wrong? He did not give any patience. He didn't ask the question, why am I being stopped? He didn't say, what for? Why are you asking me where I live here? Answer the question. Do you live here? Yes or no? I do live here. Why are you touching me? Am I being detained? Am I under arrest? I need to speak to a supervisor. I need your ID. Did I commit a crime? Am I under arrest? Am I free to go? You guys, that's how the game works. That's how you operate. You don't pull a gun out and shoot the officer. Now, if you feel like, because the laws apply to citizens just like it applies to police, if you feel like you're being unlawfully arrested You have a right to resist arrest. That's the law. Now, you better know what you're doing. You better make sure it's unlawful before you make a decision like that. I always tell people you never resist arrest. Comply to survive. That's how the game goes. You fight your battle in court. You fight your battle on the back end. Unfortunately, it's not worth resisting arrest. Here's why I say that, you guys. Because at the end of the day, you don't know what angle the officer is investigating. If the officer has legitimate reason to investigate, whether you believe it to be or not, it doesn't matter. Because if you don't know for sure, you put yourself at risk. You put yourself at risk. Think about it. I could be investigating something. I can tell you that this is legit and you still don't believe me and decide you want to resist. Then I'm going to use whatever force needed to subdue you. The officer will be justified to use whatever force is necessary. And this is why people get caught and get shot in these police encounters. Why is that? We can argue left and right all day, but it doesn't matter. The reality is you cannot resist arrest. If you put an officer in an uncompromising position where they feel like there's safety or their life is in danger, then they rely on their gun to mitigate the circumstances. You guys, you can't blame them. Unfortunately, the law supports the officer's behavior. Now, the citizens also have the same leverage, but in a different way. Again, the force has to be appropriate. Now, let's look at it from this standpoint. The officer did not express whether or not the stop was legitimate, what the officer was investigating. Some could argue he didn't have time to do it. Did he have a legal reason to be there? We don't know. The police department doesn't seem like they're really upfront about putting out the information accurately. They took 4 seconds off the video. It looks suspect to me. I'm just keeping it real. In a situation like this, transparency is key. So no matter how you want to shave it, those things are wrong. They should put out all accurate information and let the people decide. What's the other issue? The moment he put his hands on Othal Wallace was a problem. Now, because you're telling Othal Wallace that he's not free to go, he's not free to leave, which means to me that you had a reason to stop him. Now, let's just argue from the back end that he did not have a legal reason. If he did not have a legal reason, he violated Othal Wallace by putting his hands on him. Othal Wallace feels like his life is in danger. He starts to resist arrest. What does the court look at? The court's going to look at, was the use of force Othal Wallace used against the officer justifiably reasonable? The court says, listen, the officer was wrong. The officer violated your rights, right? He violated your Fourth Amendment. He prevented you from moving. He falsely detained you by grabbing you, preventing you from moving around, moving away, right? The officer violated your rights. And in that moment, you decided to resist arrest by pushing the officer off, shaking the officer off, and trying to leave. Now, the court will say, you're justified in that. Then the court's going to say, what force did you use, Othal Wallace? Well, I took my gun out and I shot the officer in the head. Ultimately led to the officer's death. The court is going to measure what the officer was doing and what Othal Wallace was doing. Was that the appropriate amount of force used to resist the arrest? You guys, even if he is justified in resisting arrest, the court is still going to look at the level of force he used and say it's not justified. There's no way they're going to justify that. Absolutely not. Now, Othal Wallace becomes a martyr. He's alive, a living martyr for his organization or other organizations similar to it. You guys, there's a portion of the black community that is cheering him on, that is saying what he did was righteous. You guys, that's absolutely false. We can't afford to teach our people to maneuver that way. No, what needs to be taught is how to use the law, how to use the language against officers. That's how you do it. That's how you do it. Violence should always be the last resort. You guys, listen, this is not a Rodney King situation where he's being beat over the head. Listen, the officer's gun wasn't even out of his holster. He never even pulled his gun out. Never. They tussled for half a second. You guys, if this was truly self-defense, would he have fled? Would he have fled? He fled, and he fled to Atlanta. And he was arrested. You guys, when you go through his social media, they pulled and start looking through his social media, you see a lot of anti-police rhetoric. Anti-police rhetoric.
And from a post dated the day after the shooting of Officer Raynor.
I love y'all. Black power. Stay strong as a nation. Keep fighting. Move forward. Don't let these pigs with you. I love y'all. Black power and shalom.
This isn't a self-defense case. This is I acted out of fear because I believe that white people, white officers, are assassinating black people every time they get pulled over. This is what happens when we push false narratives and propaganda throughout our community. We make bad choices. One would argue he resisted arrest. Earlier, I told you that is one of the leading causes of deaths and officer-involved shootings, because someone resists arrest. It's unnecessary. It's unnecessary. If the officer was right and the officer had a lawful, legitimate reason to stop him, whether or not Othal Wallace believed it to be true, Othal Wallace is wrong. He's wrong. He would have learned it whether or not he would have just been patient and just asked two simple questions. Officer, what are you investigating? Okay. Am I under arrest? No. Am I free to go? Yes, you are, sir. Thank you. I need your badge number. I need a supervisor, because I believe you stopped me, and the only reason why you wanted to come and talk to me because I'm a black man sitting in a car. You guys, it's that simple. It's that simple. If it goes the other way, you're investigating suspicious activity, who called? Sir, can you explain to me what's suspicious about a black man sitting in his car? You guys, it's about having the right attitude, outsmarting, being educated and informative. It's just that simple. The violence was unnecessary. It was unnecessary. Two wrongs don't make a right. We try to justify doing something wicked to another person because we heard something wicked being done to us. You guys, it doesn't work like that. We're not going to get anywhere operating that way. And listen, at the end of the day, you guys, weapons formed from love will always defeat weapons formed from hate. We can't move with the mindset that we are out here being assassinated. It's just not true. By the police. I did the job, you guys. It's not true. I'm not saying that he wasn't racially profiled. But here's the other thing in reference to Othal Wallace, because there was a lot of things, I was doing a lot of research on him. And one of the fourth scenarios I came up with was, what if someone set him up? What if someone knew, just the irony, someone would have called 911 knowing he was sitting out there at that moment in time. They know how he feels about the police. And they called and lied and said his behavior is suspicious, knowing he lives there. What if? Because that's something that really troubled me. This the irony that this guy who used to be affiliated with this anti-police or black supremacy organization just so happened to get stopped in this very moment. Look at his reaction. I don't know. Very suspicious, you guys. But one of the things I will say, and I can't emphasize this enough, it's about understanding the law. We need to understand the laws that govern us. There might be things that we have control over and things that we don't have control over. And unfortunately, you have some officers that are out here that are abusing their power, you guys. I will never tell you otherwise. I've seen it happen. We have situations where sometimes an officer is stereotyping and sometimes they're not. But I'm asking you, just be patient. Give the officer an opportunity to explain themselves. And if they can't, then you know you have a problem. But when you could just simply answer a question, ask for a supervisor. Even if they, oh, I got to detain you, I got to put you in handcuffs because, okay, I still need your supervisor here. You guys, there are departments that get sued all the time for this. We don't need to use violence. We just don't. Especially if your life's not in danger. Now one would say, okay, maybe he felt his life was in danger. Okay, well, where did that come from? And you heard what OG Patrice said. See, that ignorance is so malignant in our community. And if we keep that up, you guys, we're going to continue to have these outcomes that we are having. Best believe there are a lot of black men who have guns, who have committed violent offenses, and have had safe encounters being put in custody by police officers all the time. all the time. Why? Because a lot of times they complied. Again, Othal Wallace was arrested peacefully without violence because he complied. And he even said this to the police. You guys know who I am. This turned to be a peaceful surrender simply because I allowed it. Again, you guys, we know. If we look at the last few shootings involving African American men, they all resisted arrest. They never deserved to die though, but they did resist arrest. You guys, listen, you don't know what kind of officers you get when you get them. There are a lot of officers that are not good with their hands, and if you put them in a position to where they feel like they can't defend themselves without the use of the gun, you're gonna get shot. You're gonna get shot. Now you guys, listen, I know that was a lot to absorb and to really cover, and I hope that this information was informative. Now, again, I know that this is a very big undertaking that I decided to dive into. I'm not a fool and I really understand it. I do understand too that it requires a lot of work and there's multiple layers of issues that have to be examined and addressed. But in the meantime, there are things that we can do. In the meantime, there's so much more that can be done. And it doesn't necessarily always require the movement of politicians. So again, you guys, I thank you for taking the time to hear me out. I know we're not going to all agree with these things, but we need to be mindful of the law. We need to understand human behavior. We need to also take the time to study up and examine these things for ourselves and stop allowing people to push propaganda or push false narratives on ourselves or on our community. I just ask you guys to do your own research. Now listen, I know this is a lot of information. I think this will be a good follow-up to do for a live stream and give everybody an opportunity to call in, ask questions. As you guys know, I'm very transparent and I answer the questions. We don't censor over here and we don't avoid conversation. So with that being said, you guys, let me know your thoughts. I know this was a lot to take in, but at the end of the day, we need to have this conversation because unfortunately, in this moment, we're being distracted, right, by Will Smith and slapping Chris Rock when these are real issues that need to be addressed. Let me know your thoughts. This was not an attack at any organization or to Othal Wallace himself. Also, it's more so just a deep dive into how things could have turned out differently, what we can learn from this, and why this is not the best practice, and where it went wrong. At the end of the day, you guys, there's something to be learned on both sides. And at the end of the day, the goal is always to have a peaceful encounter with law enforcement and go home at the end of the night. That goes for both sides. No side's life is more valuable than the other. We're equally just as valuable and we equally demand respect and to be treated as such. And at the end of the day, if we cannot find equal respect, if we cannot find equal communication, we will continue to have these negative outcomes, you guys. I believe this opens the door for more discussion for any organization that doesn't like the police or is uncomfortable with the police. Reach out to me. Let's have the conversation. I'll teach, I'll educate on how to have better outcomes with law enforcement. Do your part. There's things that we can do. There's no need for us to end this way, right? And again, Othal Wallace, you know, he did what he did. He did what he felt was right, you guys. Again, perception is reality. The reality is they're looking to put him on the death penalty for what he did. He has children. Now his children are going to be without a father. We have to look at the bigger picture. What did we really accomplish behind that? But what can we learn from that? How can we prevent that moving forward, you guys? And with that, let these truths find you where the lies have left you. Good night. God bless.